political scientists appreciate the possibility of a large-scale war involving Turkey. Erdogan increases its rating in the homeland. On Wednesday, October 9, Ankara launched an offensive in northern Syria. The purpose of the operation is to defeat the Kurdish units of the Syrian Democratic Forces, (SDF), and provide a de-escalation zone in the Turkish-Syrian border. The international community is concerned about the possible outcome of the military conflict, because it could provoke increased activity of jihadist groups, including ISIS militants, terrorist organization, banned in the Russian Federation. Expert of the Russian Council on Foreign Affairs Anton Mardasov, senior researcher at the Institute of Oriental Studies of the Russian Academy of Sciences Vladimir Sotnikov, leading researcher at the Center for Middle East Studies at MGIMO, Alexander Krylov told MK about the possible development of events, as well as the reactions of other countries to the actions of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Is there a danger of the Turkish operation developing into a large-scale military conflict involving other countries? Vladimir Sotnikov, I think that such an outcome is possible, because the Turks do not intend to stop. Firstly, this is their third operation in Syria. Secondly, Saudi President Bashar al-Assad is very negative about this invasion of the Turkish military on the sovereign territory of a foreign state. Iran may also not stand aside. In a bad scenario, this is a war of all against all. The conflict can cover not only the Syrian opposition and official Syrian troops, but also other players. Alexander Krylov, the general situation in Syria is very complicated, and the Turkish-Kurdish conflict is one of at least 12 conflicts or wars that may arise in Syria. The situation is dangerous, there are too many domestic and international forces involved in the Syrian conflict. By itself, a new war can become a detonator for several more wars, in several directions at once. Ankara invasion could lead to the revival of ISIS. Anton Mardasov, the process of ISIS revival has been going on for a long time and systematically in the east of Syria and the territory of Iraq. Despite the fact that the Syrian secret services periodically operate in areas where ISIS cells remained, such a conflict creates fertile ground for jihadists. Vladimir Sotnikov, captured ISIS fighters are in camps controlled by Kurdish units. If the Kurds are defeated, there will be no one to guard captive militants, and this million jihadists, in a bad version, can again spread throughout the country. Syrian government forces are likely to intervene in order to dislodge, primarily, the Shilovites. Alexander Krylov, the revival of ISIS is almost impossible, because now this organization in fact does not have any potential opportunities in Syria. According to the Union, there are from 24 to 28,000 ISIS fighters, but they are scattered in various countries, in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and the Sinai Peninsula. As for Syria, almost all the militants are blocked in the province of Idlib, where ISIS has very complicated relations with other Islamic groups. Therefore, it is hardly worth mentioning that there will be a revival of ISIS. Moreover, his leadership, which is located in remote areas of Iraq and Afghanistan, has now revised its program and is working against the United States, Western Europe and the Russian Federation. That is, it creates mainly favorable conditions for the concentration of its militants, the creation of conspiratorial cells and the conduct of various sabotage actions. As for Syria, I see no way for this organization to raise its head there. Moreover, many who believed in the ideology of the caliphate, in fact, are now disappointed in the IG, because in itself, the IG seemed to them to be completely different than the state that the caliphate leaders created in the controlled territories. How will the Turkish military operation affect Russian interests in Syria? Anton Mardasov, Russia now maintains diplomatic neutrality, but in general this operation was approved by Moscow. It fits into the efforts of the Russian Federation to return the refugees, since Turkey plans to create a de-escalation zone in the area of the Turkish-Syrian border. Also, the Turkish operation allows you to intensify negotiations with the Kurds. Vladimir Sotnikov. Now Russia has a strong position as a guarantor of stability in Syria. Moscow immediately called on Turkey to restrain. Russia has good relations with Turkey, we supply weapons. Also a good relationship with Assad. The fact that Assad was able to clear the territory of Syria from militants except for individual enclaves is largely the merit of the Russian Federation. Moscow acts as an arbiter, which the Americans cannot do. Although the United States during the upcoming visit of Erdogan to Washington will persuade to cancel this military operation, but the Americans because of Trump are somewhat behind the situation. Alexander Krylov, since Russia takes the position of the legitimate president of Syria, and Bashar Assad called Turkey's actions an act of aggression, objectively, relations between Moscow and Ankara will also deteriorate. The Russian regional interest is to support the Assad regime, as the only political force that has withstood the intervention of international terrorism, has managed to suppress both internal and external opposition. In this case, our relations with Turkey will objectively worsen, because the Syrian president perceives this operation as aggression from Turkey, even under the pretext of fighting against Kurdish terrorists. From the point of view of international law, Ankara's actions are an invasion of a foreign state on the sovereign territory of Syria or open aggression. It is also not known how the United States will continue to behave. We all remember well that during the Syrian crisis, the Americans held precisely the Kurds. America does not need this war, but Trump can, for example, mobilize large-scale international support for the Kurds, and this will lead to further deterioration of relations between Turkey and other countries, and lead to the economic isolation of Turkey. I suppose that Erdogan will also not promote this situation until large-scale military operations. I think he will strike at the points where he believes that there are bases of Kurdish terrorists, and can curtail his activities on this front. Start just an ideological campaign, speaking and convincing his people, first of all, that the largest anti-terrorist campaign was held gain points in their own country. A serious problem for Turkey and for Western Europe, and Syria itself is the return of refugees to their homeland. Nobody deals with this problem at all. This is especially true for the Syrians, who live in camps in Turkey, Lebanon and Jordan. About 5.5 million people live in incredible conditions.